Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and to another guest video. Today it's with Shan Boody, everybody. Whoop whoop.
What's up, Hannah?
Hello, so good to have you here. If you do not know Shan, she is an incredible sex educator and YouTuber and content creator, podcast host, like all of these amazing things. We have been friends and colleagues for many years now.
I think since 2015, we have been rocking together. So a lot has changed in our life, but one thing has definitely not changed, our love and respect for each other. And I'm always happy to collab with you. So thanks for having me.
So I'm going to leave you lovely people in Shan's very capable hands. I asked for your advice questions about sex and intimacy in long-term relationships because Shan, that is a topic that I just think you speak so beautifully about. And I've definitely learned a lot from your content on this topic.
Hannah, thank you so much for trusting me with your audience. Okay, everybody, Hannah's not going anywhere. She's not going far. She'll be here in spirit, but let's go there together.
I'm excited. Take it away, Shan.
Hi, Hannah's community. So, different outfit, different location. What had happened was I went upstairs to send my kids off to daycare after filming that intro, and I was going to come right back down and answer your questions. Then, you know, life and kids and stuff happened, and here we are 4 days later. So, let's get to your questions now. For real this time. My partner and I are in our early mid-20s and we're trying to figure out pacing such as moving in with each other, setting up long-term plans, etc. I think we're nervous about overwhelming ourselves with decisions that will influence forever. How do you think we should go about making a game plan that will work for our relationship now and leave room for individual growth since we are still in the very early stages of adulthood? Love a game plan, and also congratulations on moving forward with someone that you care about on new territory. It's really exciting. And I think that the best practice is to get into routine check-ins with each other. And that means we don't wait for a big argument, a catastrophe, or until someone can't take it anymore. Every 6 weeks or every 6 months or every 2 months, whatever's feasible for the two of you to manage long-term, you just set time aside to say, for better or for worse, let's talk about how we feel and let's reassess where our plans and our boundaries and our needs and our wants are. That's really helpful because if you find yourself feeling really anxious about something and you want to bring it up but don't know how to, you know that you already have this predetermined date hopefully coming up in the near future where you can let your partner know these things. Or also you guys are in the habit of making time for these kinds of conversations, so it could be easier to bring it out in between those check-in dates that you have pre-scheduled. What do you do when your partner acts annoyed when you propose things to work on the relationship? When I propose these things, they act like I am making life difficult by overthinking things. Examples: love languages, assertive communication, turn-on triggers, etc. 2 ways to answer this question. Number 1, not everybody has the same hobbies and interests. And so if self-development, if self-insight are your hobbies and it is not the other person's, this could be a sign of an incompatibility, not dissimilar from them loving sports and you not being into it. And if sports are a huge part of their lifestyle and their community and their value system, that could be an indicator that you guys aren't a good fit. That's a possibility. But the other possibilities, especially if we're talking about a heterosexual relationship, in many cases, women grow up learning how to have these conversations and seeing these kinds of conversations modeled, so we get really good at it. And then what ends up happening is we try to invite a male partner who hasn't seen these conversations or taken part in them into it, and our skill level is up here and theirs is down there, so it never really feels fair or fun to play with each other. Kind of like when you play basketball with a kid, and more than likely, you're going to be better than this kid. So what do? You play down to their level to make the game enjoyable to them. You encourage them, even if they don't make the basket or they're not as good as you yet, you still want them to feel good about showing up, and you want furthermore for them to want to come back another time. So you don't slam dunk on them and push them around and like get to 20 points before they even get to 2. So I think there has to be a little bit of that in mind where you look for ways to make the game fun and fair for them, even though you are the more advanced player. Take that information as you will. But I know for me in my relationship, getting my partner excited about doing activities was a different entry point than it was for me. I was just naturally intrigued to do them, whereas for him, I had to find a why that would entice him. And when we did do them, I had to encourage him a lot and provide lots of incentives for him to want to keep coming back and doing them. And furthermore, after we did them, it's important that your partner sees the benefit of taking time to do these things. So it can be a little bit of work to get them to want to do the work. But if it works, it's worth it. How do I tell the difference between feeling uncomfortable in sexual situations because I'm out of my comfort zone, therefore having to push through discomfort, and feeling uncomfortable because I genuinely do not want to? I would say get very clear about where your comfort zone is, what it looks like, and what you can do within it. And then imagine the next step just outside that comfort zone. Not 10 feet away, not 10 blocks away. If you just got right outside of the box. So if my comfort zone is kissing on the lips, how would I feel about a kiss on the cheek? Boom. And then once I try and experiment with that, I stop and I check in with myself, I check in with my partner, and I see how that feels for me. If it feels good, maybe the next time we go back to kissing on the lips, and then 2 times later we kiss on the forehead. Or maybe we go straight from the cheek to the shoulder because I'm feeling adventurous. But creating smaller points, smaller steps in between you and whatever is outside of your comfort zone that you're interested in exploring but a little afraid of, I think makes the whole experience less scary and a lot more enjoyable, right? Sex isn't about the destination, it's about the journey. So make the journey last a little longer. Take the scenic route and see where that takes you. How do we keep the passion in the bedroom after having a baby? My wee one is an 18-month-old, and we find it difficult to have time for ourselves. And when we do, we're so tired, and we're only 28 years old. Thank you if you answer this, and you're welcome. I was about to. There's actually 2 questions here of how do we keep the passion in the bedroom after having a baby, and how do we find the energy and the time to have sex after the overwhelming demands of having a baby. So I'm going to answer the latter half because the first one, I think there's a lot more questions I would have for you before we got into what could reinvigorate your sex life. But when it comes to finding the time after having kids, listen, I got a 7-month-old and a 2.5-year-old, so I completely get it. Here's what worked for us. We filmed ourselves having sex. You don't have to film yourself if you're not comfortable with that. But if you put a timer on when you start having sex and when you finish, I think you will be pleasantly surprised how something that feels very overwhelming and long in your mind is actually a lot shorter. And so I think when we're like, I don't have the energy to have sex, sometimes it's asking yourself if you have 7 minutes in you. 7 good quality minutes because you and your partner know each other, you know what works. And if you don't have a lot of energy and time and you just want a sexual release, not necessarily orgasm, but you want that release, maybe 7 minutes is all that it requires of you. A lot of us believe that like we're having sex for hours. We're usually not. We're really not. Unless that's a special day. But most of the time, sex takes a lot less time than you actually think. And once you really quantify that, I think that allows you to say, okay, I can stay up for half an hour more to get this piece of connection with my partner that I know has huge amounts of lasting power when it comes to our relationship and how we feel about each other. How to best deal with insecurity born from a partner's infidelity. How to fully recover and not get pangs of PTSD symptoms. The couple has been together in an 18-year relationship at this point. Now, there is a book called The State of Affairs by Esther Perel, which I highly recommend to anyone, period, because we all have some touch point with infidelity, whether it's personal or observing someone we care about go through that. And furthermore, it just gives a lot of jump off point to those who are actively trying to figure out how to feel after a breach of trust in that way. The long story short answer that I would give to this would be to go to a therapist or find some kind of therapeutic medium that allows the 2 of you to get everything out, how you feel, all of the questions that you have, all of the things that you want clarified, and to do that and go through that process together, but also to create a clear agreement of when that exploration phase is over. Like in a case, there is a period of time in which you're gathering evidence, and then there's a time where you say, okay, we're going to move on and move this into trial and figure out what to do with this information. I think the mistake that a lot of people make is that they leave that exploration period open for too long and or forever, where it becomes impossible to move forward and to make a concrete decision because you're always going back. So I think a therapist might be able to help you guys get that information out there and come to a clear understanding of when that process is over and when it's time to decide what to do next. And after you do make that decision, resist the temptation to keep going back and reopening that wound, because at that point it becomes like a scab that you keep picking because it feels good in the moment, then you never let that wound heal. How do I tell the difference between responsive desire and people-pleasing behavior? Because sometimes people-pleasing also feels nice. It just makes my brain fuzzy, foggy, especially as I've been known to sub in the past. In brackets, they put subspace. This is a beautiful question. I think to your point, people-pleasing can feel very pleasing. But when you do get to that place where you realize that saying yes to others in the moment is a no to yourself that you have to pay for down the line, you're right to stop down and really assess, because there is a big difference between good for now and good for you. and it might feel good for now or good in the moment to do what others want, but it's not what's ultimately good for you in the long term. I can relate this back to myself in some capacity because sexually, I used to be very liberal with selecting new partners because it felt good in the moment, and also it was a lot less awkward than saying no to somebody. But I realized that the next day is when I would really feel that regret. In the moment, it might feel okay and it might be fun and I might be able to make the most of it, but weeks later, or sometimes even moments later, that's when I would be paying for that fast decision that ultimately wasn't right for me. So I had to start being a little slower and thinking, okay, even though this feels easy, accessible, and possibly even pleasurable in the moment, is long-term me going to look back and regret this decision? And if I even had an inclination that I might, that's when I decided to go against my gut and say, okay, I'm going to go a different way. So I think for yourself, catch yourself in the moments where you're like, this is a slippery slope, and then make that assessment as to whether this is a good for now moment or a good for me moment. And sometimes you don't know unless you go through that experience and you learn from it, but at least you're in the process of being aware and creating a new framework for how you interact with people, and furthermore, how you let people interact with you. My partner of 5 years recently accused me of cheating. I did not, obviously. How do I overcome this hurt that I feel? I know it's his own insecurities, but I felt that he didn't know me at all, despite having a thorough knowledge of my past. This is interesting because I think when cheating happens, even though it is one of the most relatable, unfortunately, one of the most relatable experiences when it comes to intimate connections, when it happens to us, whether we've been cheated on or we cheat on somebody else or somebody accuses us, it feels deeply personal. I want to give you permission to let go of some of that, where it shouldn't feel like an attack on your character, but instead this is a commentary on a flaw of human nature. It sounds like your partner probably had somebody in the past whom cheated on them and betrayed their trust, and maybe that person appeared to be the kind of person who never would, but ended up doing that. So I would get more curious about what your partner's triggers are if you want this to never happen again. If that's what your main mission is. It's not, you can't go back and undo what has happened. He can't unaccuse you of cheating. So you have to make peace with that part of what's happened before. And if your mission now going forward is to never be put in that position again, it's getting to a place where you and your partner are clear about how do we identify the triggers before we get to the accusation. So if your partner starts to feel their spidey senses start to tingle, they can come to you and say, I know this might be off base, but here's what you did or what you said, or here's what you didn't say that's making me feel uncomfortable. Can I get some assurance right now? And together, the two of you can create a plan of action to alleviate that person's insecurities so it never gets to the place that it did before. How can we revamp the spice and passion in the bedroom? We're in an 11-year relationship at only 28, and I feel like we should be having more fun. Now, there are lots of different options and opportunities to find new things to do in the bedroom. So I'm assuming you're not at a shortage of ideas. And if you are, go to any kink site, go to a porn site. Ethical porn is my favorite porn. I like Balesa, for example, and just invite more ideas into your life. Like if you're trying to remodel a bedroom, you probably go to Pinterest and look at other people's bedrooms and think, okay, what are they doing? What do I like? What do I not like? What inspires me? What draws curiosity out of me? So whenever you're getting to a stalemate when it comes to what you're doing in the bedroom, use that same methodology to try to invite more ideas into your life. So I'm assuming that you've already thought of all that. Where I think a lot of people miss the mark in terms of reinventing the bedroom is being actually there in the moment. Because if you are truly present, every moment is unique. If I am responding to the smells, sounds, tastes, other senses that I'm missing right now, that are happening right now, I've never experienced this particular concoction before. I've sat in this chair many times. I've had a camera in front of my face many times. The temperature of my toes right now, the tone of my voice, the way my headband is pressing on my head right now, the way my clothes feel on my skin. I've never in my life experienced anything like this. And if you can tap into that novelty, we don't even have to be doing new things. But if we are present and with our senses, new things are happening and occurring. There are new things that I can focus on. And how can authenticity be the spice that you're looking for? That's, I think, if you keep that mindset at the core, all the other new shit and fun shit you add into it can add extra spice. But yeah, that's how you keep it fresh. So I'm a virgin and have no interest in being in a relationship, but I do have interest in having sex. My question is, how can I go about finding someone who might want to have casual, safe, comfortable sex with me? For reference, I am bisexual. I think that you put out exactly what you just said. Maybe you don't share that you're a virgin. That could be information that you only share with someone that you feel is a good candidate. But I think that you'd say, if you didn't have the I'm a virgin part on here, I would say you did a great job of clearly identifying what you want and putting language to that that's easy to understand. We've all met somebody before who's like, I'm not ready for a relationship, but I am open to physical experiences that are pleasurable for me and hopefully reciprocal and mutually pleasurable for somebody else. Are you down? You're just DTF, but you're VDTF, which is another layer, but still the same onion. In a now 5-year relationship, how do you overcome the issue of one person's sex drive being different to the other person's? The low sex drive is making the other feel like they aren't wanted intimately and is having to make all the effort with initiating, etc. This is the most frequently asked question that I get as someone who talks about sex for a living. And because of that, I used to feel compelled to come up with an answer for people because of how often it comes up. But now I feel the opposite. Because this question comes up so much, I just want to say, figure it out. There's so many different answers to this, and this is a very common problem. So again, I want you to take peace in that. Take peace in the fact that you are not alone in this struggle. Take peace in the fact that this question comes up as often as it does, because finding compatibility in this particular area is not simple. And if you guys align on other things that are really important to you, long-term plans, values, lifestyles, maybe sexual desires, things you want to do in the bedroom, but the amount that you want to do it is at different levels, that's okay. Just take some creativity. And again, going back to if we use that other question, but I was talking about how when you want to do something new in your house, you invite new ideas, you look at magazines, you look at Pinterest, you go to friends' houses and you look around. Same thing when it comes to this. Start asking other people what they're doing. Read a lot of different research articles on this. There's so many great things online. My personal favorite way of balancing an equal libido is to take sex off the table altogether. And that's a method that you can find online that I think has worked for a lot of couples. But yeah, you got to choose your own adventure on this one and know that there's a lot to pick from, because a lot of people are in this exact same position and they have some creative ways of figuring it out. So I hope that you find the one that works best for you. If we had a full video about this, I would go into more detail, but this is one of many questions. I just want to assure you it's a very popular question. And so don't feel guilty about having to go look for answers. A lot of us are looking. What qualifies one to be called an expert in a field that is so versatile and formed around a very subjective experience? I would say, what qualifies somebody to be a good chef? Same thing, very versatile, very subjective experience of flavor and of taste. But some people form knowledge, they understand pairings, they understand the science of food, also the creativity. It's the blend of the two together. And they're good listeners, right? A great chef is a great listener who has their ear to what's out there, and they're trying different foods. That's the benefit as well. Chefs go around the world and they try the best foods and they bring it back. And so an expert, I'm assuming you're talking about sex and relationship field, is not dissimilar. I am constantly in conversation, and Hannah Witton is constantly in conversation around sex and relationships. So by nature of that, we're just privy to hearing more information and being able to pick what we have found is the best of the best, or what we are seeing from other people's experiences is working really well, and to communicate that to other people. Also of studying and of researching it. But yes, ultimately, when it comes to this particular area of life, it's half science and half art. There is a free-flowingness, a je ne sais quoi to it, but there are also particulars like anatomy and psychology, biology and physiology that can lead people to making really good assumptions and choices. The curiosity component is also very important, because even if you think you have it figured out, you got to leave space for people to be a little bit unique to the left or to the right. So I hope that answered your question. But yeah, whatever you think makes somebody qualified to be a good chef, I think similar recipe is what makes somebody good at talking about sex and relationships. My question is about clashing preferences. Partners who otherwise get along perfectly but disagree on preferences like shaving and period sex. Is compromise the only solution? And so compromise is when you meet in the middle. And sometimes there is no middle between shaving and not shaving. I guess there is. There's trimming. But ultimately, there are certain things, like having kids, for example, that there is no middle ground. So when you cannot find a compromise, what else do you do? There are 3 other C's I want to outline that can come about when you have an incompatibility. C number 1 is communication. A lot of times, it's not that there is a difference in preferences, but there is a difference in how we communicate what we like. And so we think we're on different pages, but we're just saying the same thing in different ways. We haven't been taught how to communicate, especially about sexual topics or intimate topics or our feelings in general. So give ourselves grace and space for not knowing the words or knowing how to say these things that we've never really seen modeled before. That is why people go to therapy to get the assistance of an expert communicator. That's also why people got to talk about things a lot for a long period of time. Because beyond even finding out what your partner wants, it can take a lot of conversation to really figure out what you want. So over-communicate is a huge tool that gets often overlooked. Secondly, what you want to do is go to commitment. In relationships, it's not always going to be we meet in the middle. Sometimes you are 100 and I'm 0. Sometimes I'm 80, you're 20. Hopefully, in a healthy bond, things equal out to somewhere in the 50-50 realm, but it's not always going to be because we're in the middle, like I said. So is there a commitment that someone else can make to pleasing the other person that is not extremely damaging to them? And can they do that in knowing that in other areas, you commit yourself to their joy, their needs, and their pleasure, even though it doesn't completely please you? So I would ask if it's one of those things where it's like, hey, this is really important to me. Is this something that you can provide for me? And figure out how to find your joy, even though that's not naturally where you would go with things. And if not, then that's okay. And that's where you have to go to a compatibility question. Sometimes we're just genuinely incompatible with people. And incompatibilities on small things in relationships that are not that important to us are okay. It's a natural part of life. We're not going to get everything we want in a person because we don't get everything we want out of ourselves. But if it's something that's very important to you and it's not accessible in your relationship and there really is no compromise and you've over-communicated and you both realize that you're saying exactly what you want, but they're different things and neither party is willing to judge and sacrifice for the other, then it's asking of, can we have this need met outside of our dynamic, or do we have to reevaluate our dynamic altogether? Can you talk about performance anxiety and the effects of alcohol on women during sex? I've only ever heard these talked about for men. This is a great question and an amazing one to end things off on because I want to tell you about my podcast, Lovers and Friends, and it is a sex, love, relationships, and dating podcast where each episode is about a unique topic within the intimacy umbrella. And one of our episodes was around this in particular. I had Sarah Levy, who is the author of Guest Star, on to share her personal experience when it comes to coupling and more over crutching sex and alcohol together. And I also had a therapist come on who talked about the effects, both long-term and in the moment, of alcohol on women's sexual experiences. Thank you so much to Hannah for hosting me. What a beautiful thing to provide an opportunity to communicate with her audience that she has developed a trusting relationship with. I hope that I did her right and I did proud by Hannah. And mostly I hope that everybody who asked a question found some answers in our conversation, our chat today. If you enjoyed chatting with me, like I enjoyed chatting with you, every single week I have a podcast called Lovers and Friends where we do just this. We go deep on intimate topics and we see where it lands. Sometimes I start an episode with one thought and I end with a completely different one. And if you enjoy that kind of dialogue, then I would enjoy having you visit us there too. Thanks. Bye.